Well, Staff and Graph Podcast. Here we are.
What's your name?
It's a good question. I don't know. I forgot.
You know who didn't know what their name was on Saturday morning?
Was that you?
It was me. It was most certainly me.
Because Rachel had a little birthday over the weekend, and she had some fun that apparently involved memory loss.
My mom took her shoes off on the road. Things went well.
Like on the street?
Like we were walking home. Yeah.
That's nasty, Karen. What are you doing?
And then she was like, my feet are cold. And I was like, yeah, I can't imagine why.
Karen, it's nasty. Yeah. It's nasty.
I made her throw out the socks because I was like, those are not.
At least she had socks. At least she had socks. At least she had socks on.
No,
she
would not have.
That's
Karen
good.
She is actually quite classy.
She has some dignity. At
2:30 in the morning, less so.
Yeah.
But she was like, and the best part about it was like, I wasn't holding her shoes properly, and she was like, "That's not how you hold them." I'm like, "You're
walking like basically barefoot, like let's not
She's more
throw
concerned.
Stones from glass houses here, okay?" Like, but yeah, Rachel did you have a good birthday weekend? Good time?
I did. I had a parlay of KC to win and Detroit to cover. And then when San Francisco went down 17 points,
yes,
I bet them plus 340 to win. And so I won monies on my birthday.
That's great.
But it was great. Yeah.
We could spend an entire podcast talking about the football that occurred yesterday.
The other thing I want to do is, because she's actually going to hear this one, is I want to say hi to my grandmother.
Mm-hmm. Shout out Rachel's grandma, our biggest fan, our number one fan.
Yeah, she's going to be back watching, so
that's great.
I actually had to I'll have to look presentable again, or I'm going to hear about it.
Exactly. No, not because you want to be professional or anything. No, just because of
I can't disappoint my grandmother. Good. Yeah, there's been a lot going on, but she's actually finally going to get to hear this one.
That's great. So we won't swear, and we won't. There
will be no swearing,
and we will no off-color remarks. No, everything's PG. Well, I guess starting with, we might as well get into one or two news things. And I guess we'll start with Owen Tippett, Flyers sniper, signs a long-term extension. And look, I'm rooting for Owen Tippett blatantly. I like OT a lot. At my last place, he was the first magazine profile I did, like with a big sort of feature. And he's a great guy. He works really hard. And he had a rough go in Florida just because they really were kind of stacked and he was up and down and whatever. And now he goes to the Philadelphia and he seems to have found a home. And, he scored 27 goals last year and signs an 8-year extension worth $6.2 million per. Not only is he, a happier person now, he's also a richer person now. And I think that's just great.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't the only one. I know Jeff Merrick talked about being a little bit skeptical of whether or not Torts and Tippett were going to work. Just because Torts very clearly doesn't like the flashy dashy, how we doing. And Owen Tippett has scored quite a few flashy dashy, how we doing. Mm-hmm. And I did like Torts' response to that spin around backhand one where he just went like cheddar far side. Yeah. I mean, Tortorella flat out said, he's like, I haven't seen a goal like that in a really long time. Like that's some good stuff. So it almost kind of seems like as long as Tippett's doing what he's supposed to be doing on the defensive side of the puck and not being irresponsible with the puck, it seems like Torts is like, hey, do your deeks, man. And I think we need to every contract that gets signed, when you look at every contract at this length that gets signed, the 8 years, even the 5-year deals now, has to be looked at with the cap like what the portion of cap is going to be. Yes,
it has to be cap percentage instead of
like
actual
3
dollars.
Years from now, having a second line player, even a third line player, making like 8% of your cap is going to be way more than fine.
Like when the cap, if hockey related revenue keeps going like it should, the cap should be going up. The cap should be like 90 million, 93 million in like 3 years. It's going up. So like
if Owen Tippett's 8% and he's scoring 25, 30 goals, you are all the way good.
So if you have a second liner that's making in that world where the cap is like 93.5 or something, if you have a second line scoring winger making 7.5, 8, that's fine. And this is Tippett, who's coming off 27 goal season. He has 18 goals in 47 games this year.
So he should get to 30.
Yeah, he should get to 30. And this is also, yes, like the Flyers are doing a lot better, but this is also like they, on paper at least, they don't have a ton of supporting talent. They are kind of the sum of their, like greater than the sum of their parts, and they're one of the best stories of the year. And it's fantastic.
I have Torts, and we're gonna get to this on Thursday's episode.
Yeah,
I have Torts over Tocchet. Very close. It goes.
I might be reconsidering, but I didn't choose either of those for mine. Like for my,
I think my third is your top.
I might be reconsidering after this last weekend, even. But yeah, look, Tippett is great. He will likely hit 30 this year, and the Flyers are only getting better, and he will only be getting better. And I think he can top out 35. He can even hit 40 in the right if he goes on a shooting spree. 6.2 million in a world where the cap is going to be 87 and a half, or
even 6.2 in this specific cap situation for a 35 goal scorer is more than fine. And like ran him through the model, because that's pretty much like what we're gonna do now.
Well, you have we have a model that Rachel built that's incredible. Why not use it? And for player comparables, for contract comparables, all that kind of stuff. And he's got some pretty good comparables, it seems.
Yeah. So basically, my model takes into account their age, like everything, age, and less so height and weight. Like that's like the bottom. It takes into 11 things into consideration, and height and weight are like the bottom end, just because we don't want like a 6'9" guy being compared to a 5'10" guy. Like that's not realistic. So, but it takes into consideration age curves. It doesn't take into consideration contract. What it does say is like, based on how this player is performing, this is the percentage of cap that they're worth. Here are Owen Tippett's closest comparables over his run of play. Cole Caulfield, it's a pretty good comparison if you're talking about a young scorer. Troy Terry, Drake Batherson, Daniel Sprong, and Lucas Raymond. So all relatively young players, with the exception of Terry, maybe Batherson. Like they're both are on the older end of that, but all of those are second line or better players. Like that's for 6.2. Like Troy Terry's making 7. Cole Caulfield has, I want to say that's an $8 million extension, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, around that.
Like, so Tippett not overpaid whatsoever. I think this is a fantastic contract. Really tidy piece of business.
There we go. Callback. Yeah. The other one's great. And look, also, he's a contender for the Lady Byng this year. 2 penalty minutes all season.
See, I think Morgan Riley is going to be in that conversation.
He's like, spoiler alert, he's my pick. He has 2 penalty minutes. He plays like 25 minutes a night against top competition.
To me, you shouldn't, as a forward, even like be eligible to win that, because you're not defending against like McKinnon and McDavid and Matthews and whomever else. Unless you're Patrice Bergeron, who is constantly defending against them and taking 2 minutes in penalties, fine. But I think as a defenseman, you're battling at the net front way more often. Only getting 2 minutes in penalties, I mean, with the officiating the way it is, like God only knows. But I think that award needs to go to a defenseman.
Absolutely. All right. And then another piece of news here is that Auston Matthews, he has hit 40 goals before the All-Star break, which is
this man hit 40 goals before my birthday. That I can't even tell you when. Like, that's absurd.
So, first of all, the year that he hit 60, which was 2 years ago. First of all, he just equaled his total goal total from last year.
And keep in mind, it is the 27th of January when this happened.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, that's 40 goals. A 40-goal season. We just talked about how Owen Tippett, if he's lucky,
going to be in the top 10% of the league.
Yeah, a 40-goal season gets you so much money. A 40-goal season is the kind of thing that can get you generational money. Matthews,
it gets you 11.25. William Nylander last year.
And clearly. And Matthews did that before the All-Star break, like while we're still in January. And also that's his total from like a year where we go, man, does Matthews still have it?
People asking questions, is Matthews slumping? This homeboy is going to laugh his way to 60, and you're asking if he still has it? Get all the way out of here.
Has Auston Matthews hit a wall? I will never forget that. Never in a million years. But
I think the answer there might be no.
No, he hasn't. He didn't hit it. It wasn't his rookie year. It wasn't now. Dude. So the year he hit 60, when he, the Rocket and all that kind of stuff, massive, first guy to hit 60 since like Stamkos did all those years ago. He hit 40 goals in 56 games. This year, he scored his 40th goal in the 47th game of the year.
He's averaging 0.9 goals per game.
Yeah, he's on.
That is
He's on pace for over 70.
Dude,
I believe he's on pace for 72 goals.
That is effed.
I have two questions. Number one, do you realistically think that Auston Matthews can cross the 70 goal mark here at the end of the season?
No.
Hater.
Well, okay. That's actually not fair.
Hater alert.
That's not fair. Mm-hmm. I would say it's more likely than not that he doesn't. Mm-hmm. However, zero part of me will be surprised if he does. Whereas, like, if you said Sam Reinhart's going to score 70, I would be like, you're on drugs. Like, it's not happening, right? But he's got 4 hat tricks this year.
4 hat tricks.
I believe I read a stat that's like Auston Matthews has more hat tricks this season than like 95% of NHL players have in their career.
Yes. Now, which is crazy. Now he's a career 16.3% shooter, and he's shooting at 20.2 this year. So it's a little bit over.
It's a little bit. It's not Besser
crazy.
Miller situation.
or Reinhart. Like, Reinhart's playing really well.
No, but when I put out a tweet the other time, like, Elias Pettersson's only shooting 2% higher than his career. So, like, that's really sustainable. Yeah. Besser is shooting nearly double.
Yes.
And Miller is shooting double.
Yeah.
That is not sustainable. And I would say with Auston, he's a 16% shooter. I think 18 is sustainable for him. Mm-hmm. I do not think 21, 22 is. I think we all need to be just a little bit more realistic here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it's more likely than not that he doesn't get 70. I think it's probably a pretty fair assessment that if he stays healthy, which is always a consideration here, I think he passes McDavid's total from last year,
and that was 65.
And he was chasing 70.
Yes.
Like, that's insane to be. The fact we're having this discussion and it is January is insane.
It's just insane to even think. I know the scoring is up, but it's insane to even think in this day and age, like, can a player hit 70?
Era adjusted, he's still tracking ahead of Ovechkin, and we're having a discussion about Ovechkin passing Gretzky. Like, if
we're having less discussions about that lately than we normally do.
But the fact that we're even having that discussion,
is
now
insane.
The difference between Ovechkin and Matthews is Ovechkin was literally never injured during his career up until at this point, whereas Matthews has been. So we do have to take into consideration health, but on a goals per game and like how many goals throughout X games in their career, Matthews is tracking faster, which when you think of when we were growing up, when you think of Ovechkin, the fact that Matthews is scoring at a higher pace is almost unfathomable to me, because every morning on SportsCenter, it was like, how many did Ovechkin score?
Well, we're talking about the greatest goal scorer of all time in Ovechkin. Like, you look at era adjusted, he is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Gretzky was scoring against plumbers when, the
butterfly wasn't even allowed.
Exactly. So it's absolutely remarkable. And my second question, Rachel, is he's got to be the Hart Trophy favorite, right?
Nope.
Really? You take McKinnon over that, I guess?
Yep. Somebody laughed at me for being like, you have Matthews above Kucherov. LOL, you don't watch hockey. And I'm like, if you score 70 goals and don't win the Hart Trophy because Nathan McKinnon puts up 160 points, like, that, a 70-goal season pretty much is an auto Hart situation, unless you have a situation like McKinnon where we're talking about averaging 2 points a game, right? I do think that if Matthews actually gets 70, that he'll win it, because the voters will look at that and be like, that's abnormal.
Like, if you hit like an absurd benchmark, like 70 is an absurd benchmark.
Like, if McDavid would have put up like 175 points last year and he wasn't everyone's first place vote, like, you should just lose your voting rights.
Believe me, I've seen some crazy ballots in my day, and I'm sure you have as well.
Like, we're going to go in depth on this on Thursday when we do our midseason award show, but no, he's not the front runner for the Hart. Not even by the model. The model has him not 1 and not even 2.
Is he 3?
He's 3.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm sure you can probably imagine who the second player in that discussion is.
Well, it's also like I don't know. We watched the Leafs more than any other team, just because I was at I was at all of their home games up until like November.
I have clients
up until I quit my job, and then you have like clients, whatever. Like, it happens that way. But like, just from the eye test and just watching, like there are so many games, pretty much like every other night almost, where the Leafs are not in it at all. And it's literally only Auston Matthews that gives them a chance. Only. Like over the weekend against that first game against the Jets.
I watched Wednesday's game.
Yeah.
I, for very obvious reasons, did not watch the one on Saturday.
But he was like the only guy other than like Robertson at overtime.
I thought Robertson was really good.
Robertson was really good. He should
but the
never
Leafs had
come out of the
zero business being in that game.
Exactly.
And I did love that Samsonov went to give the belt to Matthews,
and
Matthews was like,
no.
Do not even think about it. Like, good to be self-aware because.
Well, it's also like Samsonov. Good for him, man. Like he came back from getting waived, and now he's allowed 1 goal or fewer in all 3 of his games.
He's having his Stuart Skinner comeuppance.
Exactly. There's something about goalies making this in-season complete surge. And hey, man, if you have Ilya Samsonov as an NHL goaltender again, right around the time Joseph Woll comes back, there are a lot of problems on your team are solved right there. But yeah, anyway, Rachel, speaking of teams with problems. Speaking of teams with problems, the Los Angeles Kings are in absolute free fall right now.
They're struggling.
They're not just struggling. They've lost 16 of their last 18.
What?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So as a preamble to this, I did the prep on what we're going to talk about. I knew Los Angeles was struggling. I was not aware that they had lost 16 of their last 18, including, I believe, to San Jose, which is not ideal when you're losing to your in-state rival who is trying to get the first overall pick. That's bad. But we wanted to talk. So last week was the...
Hold on, sorry. The Kings are they're 2-8-5 in their last 15 games. They have 2 regulation wins in their last 15 games. And this was tweeted right before they lost to the Blues. So they're 2-8-6 in their last 16 games. I believe they've lost 16 of their last 18. They haven't had a regulation win in, I think, a month. They are absolutely...
They're the anti-Oilers. They're literally the anti-Oilers who haven't lost since Christmas.
It is unbelievable. Like, they are in absolute free fall. Drew Doughty is out here calling out his teammates.
Good for him.
For only caring about points. And when that happened, a lot of people assumed that it was about one certain player. Rachel, do you think, A, that it was? And also, B, would you like to maybe deep dive into a certain player that was supposed to come in and be the answer, and instead they're in free fall?
I think I'm going to give Drew Doughty and this player the benefit of the doubt, because if Pierre-Luc Dubois is only focused on points and he is averaging less than 1 point a half point per game, we need to have a whole different talk. Now, if Pierre-Luc Dubois is only 0.46 points per game because he's being excellent defensively and contributing in other facets and maybe being unlucky.
We're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I could buy that.
Yeah.
But if Pierre-Luc Dubois is focused solely on points and is producing at 0.46 points per game, then if I'm Drew Doughty, I might be doing a little bit more than calling him out in the media.
Yeah. So here we are. Let's talk about, this would be the hottest topic in the league that coincides with the Kings' downfall here, or the Kings' free fall as they're doing right now, is Pierre-Luc Dubois. The Kings were a phenomenally structured, deep, well-coached, well-put-together team that was winning, had great up-and-coming players, were able to draft, develop, produce internal great assets for years and years under Luc Robitaille and Rob Blake. And another thing that they had to was that almost every other team in their position didn't have was cap space. They had a ton of cap space. And so this summer, they lose in the first round again. They're still a great team, but they lose in the first round again. They go, okay, we clearly need one sort of big another nuclear weapon or another big guy to come in here, and a big asset to come in here and be the missing piece, the person who takes us over the top. And Pierre-Luc Dubois, guy's young. He's 26 years old. Point per game guy. He has track record of 30 goals. He's good face-off numbers, decent defensive numbers. Like, you seem like the perfect guy to put in your center depth alongside Anze Kopitar, the ageless Anze Kopitar, and one of the best. Like, I guess now that Patrice Bergeron is retired, arguably the best defensive center in the league in Philippe Deneau, and.
And Kopitar's won Selkes too.
Exactly.
Like, we're talking about
so you should have
a murderer's row of two-way centers.
At the start of the season, I remember looking at that and going, this might be the deepest center depth in the league, just in the versatility.
And Pierre-Luc Dubois is not going to have to play two-way. He can just focus on scoring. He can't even do that.
He can be sheltered. He can be getting 60% zone starts. You can heap Philippe Deneau with all the
that's
offensive.
the problem.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so, but the thing is that he's a restricted free agent. And when it comes to restricted free agents, you need to give up something to get something. And
boy, howdy did they.
Yeah, so they traded Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, Rasmus Kupari, and a second-round pick to the Winnipeg Jets. And good on Winnipeg for doing that, because it was the worst kept secret in the world, not just hockey, in the world, that PLD. Rachel moved her phone and it made a fart noise and it made me laugh. It was the worst kept secret in the world that Pierre-Luc Dubois wanted out of Winnipeg at the draft in 2022.
When I was there and you were asking me, and I was like, I'm going to throw my chicken nugget at your head.
But also it was in Montreal.
Yeah.
And he was at the draft thinking he was going to be traded to Montreal.
He was there. He
was there.
He was literally
there. And it didn't happen, but he wanted out, and this has become a thing.
He was sulking.
He was. Well, we've seen him sulk on the ice in Columbus.
John Tortorella, bless him for that.
He straight up stopped playing. And so he comes out with, and it was a great written piece. I believe it was by Eric Stevens, my long lost brother. Same spelling and everything. You don't see that very often. But of The Athletic, he wrote a great, it was either Murat or Eric Stevens, wrote a great piece on Pierre-Luc Dubois this year, sort of his side of the story. Why he forced his way out of two different teams, basically. And it was framed in his way of being like, there's some other things that I won't get into, but mainly it was, I only have so many years where I'm a viable, NHL elite player. And I want to win. And I didn't think I could win on either Columbus or Winnipeg. And hey, the former I can understand. We're gonna get into that in a further episode.
Monday next week is the Columbus Blue Jackets deep dive.
Yes, because they deserve it. But so I understand that, and it sort of made everyone reevaluate. Okay, maybe we were too harsh on Pierre-Luc Dubois for forcing his way out, because at the end of the day, in a workplace, if you don't feel valued or you don't feel like you're going anywhere at a company, you can leave. You're allowed to leave.
I don't have any issue with Dubois doing that.
Exactly.
Now, you can't quiet quit. That I do have an issue with.
So that lessened the heat on him. But it also came with an idea. It also came with the understanding that, okay, now you're in your preferred destination. You got what you wanted. You forced your way out of Columbus to Winnipeg. And you didn't like Winnipeg, so you forced your way out of Winnipeg. You not only did you get the landing spot you wanted, you got the money that you wanted as well, and the long-term commitment that you got. Everything, you will never feel disrespected. You never feel like you're not going anywhere. LA's a team that spends the cap. They're in a major city. You should always feel like they're
on the verge of contending. You probably take them to that spot.
You are always going to feel, likely through the remainder of your 8 years, that they are going for it. And this is what you do. 20 points in 47 games. You're making over $8 million a year, and the team is an absolute free fall. Now, and
partially because of your play.
Yes. And now the guy who's been there the longest, who's won 2 Stanley Cups, who is known as being one of the wiliest guys out there.
Don't forget, they traded Jonathan Quick out to make room.
Exactly. They traded Jonathan Quick out, and they traded
Vladislav Gavrikov.
Well, he's there, but
or traded for Gavrikov.
Him. But they also to make room for you, they weren't able to re-sign Korpisalo, which was good in the end because he's been terrible. But they're now relying on geriatric Cam Talbot. Felix Copley is out for the year, so now they're relying on David Riddick.
That's good.
This is to pay you, and your comparables are pretty rough.
Yeah, so before we even 0.46 points per game.
Horrible.
So I'm like, I wonder if he is contributing in any other sense.
Yeah.
He has one redeeming comparable here.
Who is it?
This is a player that is worth being paid like $8.5 million. And it is his farthest away comparable is Joel Eriksson. That is the furthest comparable. His close comparables, boy howdy, these are not good. Alex Kerfoot, Sam Bennett, Chandler Stevenson, and Adam Lowry, and Pavel Zacha. So Alex Kerfoot was overpaid at $3.5 million. That's his closest comparable.
I'm sorry. If your closest comparable, I know Alex Kerfoot has been a lovely surprise, I guess, for the Arizona Coyotes this year. That's mainly because he's playing top line, top power play, whatever. If your closest comparable is Alex Kerfoot, you should rethink your life. I'm sorry.
You're a good hockey player, but you're not an $8.5 million hockey player. And then we get to Chandler Stevenson, who, when healthy, is the third line center in Vegas. And that's exactly where a great depth player. Right.
Yes, but that's where he is. You're right. Yeah. On the third line.
$8 million. Then you get to Sam Bennett and Adam Lowry. Jets captain, Adam Lowry, who...
The irony is great on that.
The irony is hilarious because Mark Scheifele's been out and Adam Lowry's had to step up. So the only reason that Adam Lowry is in this comparison box is because he's taken advantage sort of the opportunity and the ice time. And that's Pierre-Luc Dubois has been bouncing back and forth between the top 6 and the bottom 6. And so their quality of competition is relatively similar. And when the Jets were playing the Leafs, Adam Lowry really struggled. And that was part of the reason why the Leafs were able to eke out those wins. If you're Pierre-Luc Dubois, none of those players are, none of those players are making $8.5 million. And then you have Joel Eriksson, and the only reason he's in there is because of the defensive attributes make him so valuable that he's just within the realm.
Eriksson makes a little over $7 million. And the only, like you said, the only reason he's there is because he's one of the best defensive forwards in the game. Is Pierre-Luc Dubois that?
I didn't know.
Exactly. And
Eriksson is scoring.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of one of those things where it takes in my model accounts for recent run of play. And recent run of play, Eriksson has been scoring at a clip that the model would expect Dubois to score at, but he's just better defensively.
Yeah.
And so Eriksson is more of a historical comparison to Pierre-Luc Dubois. So basically coming into this year, that was a good comparison for Dubois, which is kind of why when he originally signed, you and I talked, I was like, well, if he's going to be two-way, maybe Joel Eriksson but with more offense and less defense, you're going to have a little bit of a balance here. That's the only reason Eriksson here. His actual comparables for this season
are Kerfoot, Zacha, Bennett, Lowry, Stevenson.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love Pavel Zacha.
But he's not
making $8.5 million.
Would you not only pay, would you give up Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari a second round pick and pay $8 million to any of Alex Kerfoot, Pavel Zacha, Sam Bennett, Adam Lowry, or Chandler Stevenson?
Absolutely not. You'd be fired immediately.
Yeah. So then this is bordered on, this is sort of transgressed from and
I don't even want to put this on LA because I think the Kings, generally speaking, if you actually get good Pierre-Luc Dubois, that's an excellent trade.
Absolutely.
For them.
It's not their fault.
Jets extracting this level of value.
Yes. So I want to so the other side of this, that's what I'm saying. The other side of this is not just the cap space and the commitment that you give into this guy. You also gave up assets. You gave up Gabe Vilardi, who after you drafted in the first round and after years of development, he finally hit his stride last year. You gave him up.
Well, no. We're not even there yet.
Oh, okay.
Winnipeg gave up Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic.
Yes.
To acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois. So I think we actually probably need to start there because
so let's go all the way back to the beginning. Then.
Right.
Okay.
So they gave up Laine and Roslovic in the Dubois deal. And we were kind of
I remember that. That was the early days of the podcast.
This could be a win-win.
Yeah.
Okay. Patrick Laine has actually been quite good for Columbus. 2 seasons ago, he had 56 points in 56 games. That's a point-a-game player.
Yep.
Right? Last season, he had 52 and 56. That's almost a point a game.
Health is always a problem. Is obviously a problem.
Yeah.
And he's in the
But
player.
when he's in the lineup,
Yes.
he scores. This season,
Aside from this season,
I'm not going to count his performance against him because he's only half a point a game this year because he just announced that he's going into the NHLPA Player Assistance Program, and Columbus had now we go back, like when he said he's going back to Finland, Pascal Vincent actually protected him and said he's had a bit of a setback because they didn't want to say he was going into the program. So I think Columbus, even though we're going to do a deep dive on them next week, deserves some credit there.
Absolutely.
For protecting until Patrick Laine was ready to say, I'm going into the assistance program. And because that there's a PA statement about
we know
this,
that it's not,
there's nothing nefarious going on here. We do wish Laine all the best because he was performing really well. And so when you think about it, Winnipeg
I'm also not going to trust Columbus to deploy their players properly this season at all. So why don't we just wipe Laine's?
This season it
doesn't count. So the last 2 seasons he had 56 and 56 and then 52 and 56. That's basically a point per game player. Not bad.
Well, yeah, you take that. And you got Jack Roslovic, who is
40-ish guy. 40-ish point player.
He's a 40-ish point player. So that's 120 points.
Yeah, perfectly acceptable middle six player.
120 points. Are you getting 120 points? Did Winnipeg ever get 120 points out of Pierre-Luc Dubois?
Absolutely not.
Winnipeg won the trade. Okay, cool. Now we get to, so Winnipeg for Pierre-Luc Dubois gave up Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. Okay, cool. Now they trade him out to LA and they get Alex Iafallo, Gabe Vilardi, Rasmus Kupari, and a second round pick. Second round pick is basically a piece of chicken. I would like to point out Winnipeg's second round picks have been the most successful outside of Anaheim's in the past decade, I believe. Yeah.
Who have they got? Like, do you have any names off the top of your head?
So they've got, I believe, Logan Stanley was a late first. Elias Solomonson is coming from Sweden. He's going to be somebody.
Where was Chaz Lucius? Was he a second rounder or was he a first?
Was a late first.
Okay.
Winnipeg nails. So what I've noticed, I don't have it off the top of my head, in their sort of late first round to mid third round, they're nailing those picks.
Yes.
Like Declan Chisholm is one of those.
Brad Lambert went late first round.
Brad Lambert was like 29th
Did
overall.
Rutger McGroarty go?
No, he was like 13 or something.
I can't remember that.
Like,
okay, yeah.
He was in the teens, so like no, that's
so that's not late.
Connor Hellebuck was a 4th round pick.
Was he? I think he might.
4 or 5.
Was he 4th? I think he might. I think he was a 5th.
Okay, either way, that's a mid round pick. That's absolutely
they've been killing
nailed
it with that. Yeah,
like their ability to draft. So it's a piece of chicken. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
However, Gabe Vilardi, 20 points in 27 games. So he has equal the amount of Pierre-Luc Dubois points in 20 less games this season.
Oh my god!
Shall we go through his comparables?
Absolutely.
Okay. Dylan Cousins.
Pretty good.
Wyatt Johnston.
Pretty good.
Dawson Mercer.
Pretty good.
And Nick Waugh.
Also pretty good.
Stanley Cup champion Nick Waugh. That's just one. Now we're going to go to Alex Iafallo, who's got 18 points.
So 2 less than Pierre-Luc Dubois in the exact same amount of games.
In 47 games.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's almost if you just traded Alex Iafallo for Pierre-Luc Dubois, you're almost
net even.
You're almost net even. Yeah.
His comparables this year: Tyler Bertuzzi, Anthony Duclair, Jake DeBrusk, Anthony Beauvillier, and Anthony Mantha, who's having a resurgence.
Yes.
So Iafallo's got a little bit of up and down.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think we can all agree that all of those are good hockey players. If I said you can have any one of one player from each category, so you can have Dylan Cousins and Jake DeBrusk for Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I would say no.
Adam Lowry, you would be like, yeah, I'll take that.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I said, Mike, you're building a hockey team, I'll give you Dylan Cousins, or I'll give you Wyatt Johnson and Jake DeBrusk, and you have to give me Sam Bennett. Be like, yes.
I would do that just for Wyatt Johnston. Like I would do that just for.
This is what we're talking. Winnipeg turned Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic into 2 top 6 players.
Yes. And Rasmus Kupari.
A bottom 6 contributor and a pick.
A second, what might be a high second round pick if they keep falling like this.
But regardless, they turned one guy who they were not going to keep into 2 top 6 players. That, as much as we give Kevin Shoveldayoff and his staff some grief sometimes, that is asset management. That is how you do it, right? This is, frankly, exactly what the Leafs should have done with Marner last summer. You don't know if you're going to be able to sign him. At least in Winnipeg's case, they knew they weren't going to sign him. So, like, we are recouping assets before any movement kicks in.
Is Marner an all-star this year?
Yes, I think.
That's a shame. Man,
he's not.
I don't think it's Matthews, Riley, Nylander. No, there's four Leafs.
Oh, then it is Marner.
Yeah. That's still insane. Like, this trade. Okay, we're 47 games in. So we're a little over. We're 5 games over half a season.
Yeah, there is there is a situation where Dubois like rebounds, but this
so far it's been an
extension hasn't even kicked in yet.
Exactly. Like at the time that this
you're gonna get LTIR'd before you even like get kicked
Robida
in.
Islanded already. Now this is sorry, there was a dog that came out on one of the balconies across there, and I got distracted by the cute dog. No, but this is a disaster. This is a unmitigated disaster so far, because the Kings, look, they are in a good situation, but they don't have forever. Drew Doughty is getting older by the minute.
Anze
Kopitar getting older by the minute. Cam Talbot getting older by the minute.
And their young players like Quinton Byfield are only going to be on ELCs for so long.
I think Byfield is an RFA this year. I think stuff like that.
But he's going to come cheap. Like he's not getting
a Mitch Martin, but he's still going to make more than $925,000.
Probably $2 million. Yeah.
Maybe even he's having a good year. He might even ask for a bit more. Like, who cares? That's still more. That's still over double what you're paying before. And yes, the cap's going up by a bit, but you still want to improve your team. This is like you need, when you're paying a guy, when you give up 3 NHL ready, potentially top 6 assets and a draft pick that could land in the top 60 or whatever, or that will land in the top 60 for a guy, for one player who then you're committing $8 million to for the next basically decade.
It's unacceptable to not only not show up in the regular season, but what have I always said? If your salary starts with an 8 or higher, I don't even care what you do in the regular season, because you had better be real good in the playoffs. But the caveat on that is
you need to make the playoffs.
If you aren't playing in the playoffs because you were bad in the regular season, that is a larger transgression than not showing up in the playoffs.
Like, for example, the Leafs, they signed Tyler Bertuzzi.
Right.
Yes, because he's a good player, whatever. But they signed him for the playoffs because they know he has an extensive track record of
excelling in those instances.
Exactly, elevating his play, becoming a better player, and his actual skill set fits the playoffs kind of better than the grind of an 82 game season. And they kind of did the same thing with Max Domi. He always elevates his play in the playoffs.
Right, and neither of those players are being paid.
Yes,
even if you combine.
No, they are combined. They're getting paid $8.5 million.
They're a combined Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Exactly. And both of them, you could say, I think they have 8 goals between them this year. But they're still contributing, number one. And also, barring a complete disaster, as long as Auston Matthews is healthy, really, the Leafs are going to make the playoffs. So then we reserve judgment until then.
Now, if they don't show up in the playoffs, then we're having a different conversation.
Then they're just not getting re-signed, and it looks terrible.
Pierre-Luc Dubois.
But the Leafs also haven't lost 16 of their last 18. They haven't. The Leafs also have regulation wins in the last month. The Leafs also haven't. Are not just absolutely bleeding goals. They're also not calling out these guys for only caring about points, especially when they only have 20 and 47. Because it's one thing to be struggling. It's one thing to, who knows what's behind struggles, right? It could be mental. You could be going through something, whatever. But for a guy like Drew Doughty to sit in front of the media and call you out, and look, it's obvious he didn't call you out by name, but we all know.
Oh, there's definitely at least 2 or 3 players that he is very clearly talking about.
I can basically tell you I can't tell you how I know, but I can tell you that with certainty, he was talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Yep. I know that for a fact.
Yeah. And as do I. It's absolutely what was happening there. So
for not only you to be struggling, because people can understand struggles, right? Like it might be tough to adapt to a new team. It might, you might be having some family stuff, whatever. But if you're playing in a way that's like cheating and hurting the whole team,
then step away.
Then either step away or be like, it's just unacceptable. You can't keep going on like that. And that shows selfishness, whatever. And especially when you're the guy in the league who has the reputation of forcing his way out of stuff, or being like, oh, I don't want to win, so I'm going to go here. And then you finally get everything you want. And now you're apparently only in it for yourself. as well? Because you have the reputation of being selfish, basically, by prioritizing your own well-being, as valid as it is.
And yeah, I don't have an issue with him saying, I want to play somewhere else. I have an issue with the quiet quitting. And then now, like, okay, now you got what you wanted. It's put up or shut up time.
Yeah.
And I know Pierre-Luc Dubois is probably like a good human being. And, you know, like, this is not an assailant on his character at all. This is, you made your bed. You got to lie in it. And you got to make it work. Sometimes you're going to have to eat a shit sandwich. And Pierre-Luc Dubois right now is not living up to his contract. And it's a major issue for the LA Kings. And that trade, I mean, is...
A coach is going to get fired over this.
The Winnipeg Jets deserve a ton of credit.
Absolutely. For
extracting this value, knowing that Pierre-Luc Dubois was not long for their organization. And now they've put themselves in a position with the moves that they've made. They have a more balanced roster and they're contending for a cup.
And also for holding out for like a year. We all and look, I'll say I criticize them for just going with Dubois again. They held out until they got the price that they thought was worthy of a player of Dubois' character. They could have sold him for pennies on the dollar to Montreal at any point, at the draft, trade deadline, whatever. But instead, they held out until they got the pieces that they wanted, that they felt it was earned, or they felt that the asset had earned. And boom, look at where they are now. They're contending for a cup.
Yeah, I think Kevin Shoveldayoff and his staff
deserve a mountain of credit for that. Just
an incredible amount of credit for really being patient, right? Sticking with it, bringing in somebody like Rick Bowness, allowing him to make the changes that he needed. And if you look at it, like Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, Josh Morrissey, Connor Hellebuck, like they kept pieces of their core. And it turns out that you can remove a core piece from your roster. And if you do the proper due diligence and you bring in the players that fit who you're keeping, it can really accelerate what you're doing. I couldn't possibly be talking about another team there. But I think Kevin Shoveldayoff and his staff deserve a ton of credit for, like you said, being patient. And the other GM that was patient where it eventually paid off was Joe Sakic with Matt Duchene.
Absolutely.
That's two instances.
It's very similar.
Where both GMs said, you're going to sit there, you're going to wait.
Because we're not getting pennies on the dollar for you. Yeah, you're under contract.
Both of those teams in impossible situations won their deals by a landslide.
Yeah.
The Colorado got a cup with the pieces that they got for Duchene. Yeah. Like, you won the trade. The trade is done. The trade is over.
Freaking Bowen Byram,
Sam Girard.
Sam Girard and Bowen Byram right there. That's like half your defense. It's like half your top four.
Yeah.
Like remarkable. So
I think when you look at it, those are examples of trades where the GM who was in the tough spot said, don't screw you. I'm waiting and you're going to pay up because he's a good player and you want access to him. You're going to pay up.
Yeah.
And that's going to be that. And so I think Kevin Shoveldayoff, like you look at it, he turned Laine and Roslovic
into Dubois.
A 4 pieces, 3 of which are playing on a cup contending team.
Yeah. And contributing to the cup contention.
That's there's a reason that they're there. And that is a tidy piece of business for him.
So I guess the last question I have for you, Rachel, is do you think Dubois can turn it around this season?
This season, no. I think we're going to...
So do you think that it's do you think it's curtains for the Kings then?
I think they'll make the playoffs.
You think so?
I think they'll make the playoffs.
Even in their current skit? Wow.
I think they'll make the playoffs. I mean, we were sitting here talking about Edmonton. I think they'll make the playoffs. I think it's going to be a lot tighter than they want it to be. I look at how the Kings are going and some of their underlying numbers, and they need to start getting contributions that are, I guess, more 200-foot contributions. It can't just be about scoring goals. They've got to get to a situation where they've got players playing in all areas of the ice in a responsible fashion. I think, I never want to ill wish on anyone. I think Dean Evison is a fantastic coach, and Jay Woodcroft as well. I think those two would. I think Dean Evison more than Jay Woodcroft, just for what the Kings are. I think he would be a fantastic sort of guy to go there. I'm not sure Craig Berube is a fit there.
Dude, Dean Evison, like if the Leafs miss out on Dean Evison, every Leafs fan should be thoroughly pissed. He is exactly what they need. It's a shame. But anyway, not to make it Leafs.
Yeah, so
congratulations to the Winnipeg Jets for winning that. Good for them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we love to see it. And it seems by all accounts, like both Velarde and Iafallo are loving it there. Yeah. I mean, how could you not? You're winning.
And keep in mind, it's Winnipeg. It's not easy to love it there. So good for them. All right, Rachel. Well, we are, this is the end of the podcast. We will be back on Thursday with our mid-season review, awards, predictions, all that stuff. Then we have the All-Star. We're going to be doing a ton of content with that. Stay tuned. And then on Monday, we're going to do our big Columbus deep dive because David Juracek basically flamed the entire organization and they'll be making extremely weird decisions for the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So we're going to do all that.
I'm fired up for that because
I am excited. Yes.
David Juracek is also represented by Alan Walsh, who is not ever silent about advocating for his players. And so I wonder, like, first of all, I have to think Alan had a hand in setting up that interview. But we're going to deep dive into player development as a whole because this is something I actually studied. And I'm going to...
And how Columbus is doing badly at it.
Yeah, I'm going to run that through. So I have my regular model. I'm going to run it through the thesis model and be like, just how bad is this development? Like, who deserves to be playing where type situation? Because I can tell you, David Juracek absolutely belongs in the NHL lineup. And so we're going to break all that down on Monday. That is going to be... that's going to be fun.
We'll
have our PWHL report on Thursday.
Absolutely. It'll be great.
I'm super excited for the content that we got coming for All-Star.
Great. So subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Twitch, any podcatcher you have. Donate to Jumpstart, our charity of choice. We love Jumpstart so much. It helps economically disadvantaged children play team sports. And that's just something that we both believe in wholeheartedly and think is great. So if you can, consider donating. There's links in the episode description. And Rachel, we will be back on Thursday. And then All-Star will be a lot of fun.
We'll see you then.